Hi, my name is Lillian. I'm 58 years old and have experienced 34 years of covert domestic violence, otherwise known as narcissistic abuse. But I'm not just a survivor, I am more than a conqueror in Christ Jesus. If this is your first time, thanks for stopping in. And to get a wider scope of what I talk about here, you can look in the description box. There's a link that says why I'm here. If you're returning, I'm sorry you're walking through this, but I'm glad you found your way here. And I'll always remind you to listen to my content with that one question in the back of your mind. Is my marriage difficult, or am I married to a dangerous man? That's the motivation for this channel, what my marriage was like and how I woke up to the truth that my husband wasn't a difficult, clueless guy when it came to relationships. No, he knew a lot, actually, and that's what makes him such a dangerous man. If you're starting to wake up and think that this might be your reality, please be gentle on yourself. You're about to step on a rough ride of truth, a darkness you've never experienced, but just know that you're not alone. I'm here for you. I hope this channel will be a source of awakening, validation, healing, and will show you how God uses a righteous divorce to free you from bondage of narcissistic abuse in your marriage. As you're listening, if you start to feel overwhelmed or have weird sensations inside your body, that means your emotions are reacting to something you've hidden inside your nervous system. Pause the video, pray, and ground yourself. I've listed some verses and a few videos on grounding basics in the description box. When you experience these overwhelming emotions, try and press into them and see what they're telling you. It's no different than examining physical pain in the body. We don't ignore that. It's an indicator something's wrong with your body. Strong feelings and emotions, usually in the form of fear or anxiousness, they're a warning system. Something's wrong deep inside your heart. There's an area that needs to be healed and restored. Sometimes you can't press into these intense feelings because of circumstances or because you're not around a safe person. This is when it's better to practice grounding. You always want to come back to those feelings, though. Sink into them so you can examine them. You never want to stuff them and ignore them or try not to forget about them. These are emotional warnings that your soul is trying to show you. So, today I'm going to structure my content different than I normally do. I'm going to start with the end. I want you to know my main takeaway right up front. Then I'm going to come back around and explain how I got there. Here's a question. Is your marriage balanced? If it's truly a one-flesh relationship, then it is. Anything less than that is an exchange of services from each role, like a job description for functionality. My main takeaway is that a difficult husband wants to live in relationship with you. He's just dysfunctional at it. This kind of man is healthy. It doesn't always seem like he is, but his motive is good. He knows there's a difference between men and women, and he likes femininity. He intuitively knows what a relationship should look like. He knows what he wants. He just doesn't always know how to make it happen. It is the opposite with a dangerous man. He won't live in relationship. He expects you to live from function and pretend that you are experiencing the substance that's found in a relationship. Your purpose as his wife is to help him hide this deception. That's why he married you, so he could pretend to be a sheep. Your role in this marriage has been to imagine that you feel loved, to create the false reality that you are living in a one-flesh relationship that's truly alive and filled with life, love, movement, and growth, and maturity in Christ. But in reality, you're strangled and stifled, weak and sad, because the only thing you can share with a malignant man is the exchange of services that are found in defined roles. Marriage can be divided into two parts: the form of the hierarchy. They're the roles for both the husband and the wife. Following this structure makes for smooth function in the roles and running of a home, the structure that binds it and holds it together. It defines the roles that are unchangeable because God set them out and defined who would fulfill each one. These roles are finite and static. They're not eternal. They don't exist in heaven, and that's why there's no life in them. Inside the bonds of marriage is the substance, which is everything else that makes up the marriage. The substance is the opposite of static. It's alive. Wives have been completely blinded to the distinction between a difficult husband and a dangerous man because we've erroneously believed that when you respect your husband, that means you're living in relationship with him. You are not. Respect isn't part of the structure and form. Respect is a part of life inside the structure of the hierarchy. In Greek, respect is a word of response for interpersonal connection. It's a word for emotions that are filled with feelings of affection. Respect is an organic experience. It grows and deepens and broadens through maturity, time, and experiences. It's alive. Static things do not grow. They're dead. The tasks found in each role that's defined as for the husband or wife are tangible and visible. You can't see respect because it's felt. It's what you experience through connection in the relationship. There are 2 points that God makes when he talks about connection in the marriage relationship. One you can find in 1 Corinthians 7 is about the intercourse part of the relationship. Ephesians 5 is about the friendship part of the relationship. This relationship dynamic between men and women that's supposed to happen in connection has been twisted and confused. We've been getting incomplete teaching, and it's inappropriate for how a feminine soul was created by God to live. It's actually backwards teaching for us women. I'm not saying that Paul misunderstood. He knew exactly what he was saying. I believe his words have been misrepresented. This unbalanced teaching has made us females the unguarded and unprotected lambs and sheep in Christianity, the opposite of what Jesus wanted for marriage. I'm not going to tackle the 1 Corinthians 7 portion in this video, though, only the Ephesians 5 part, and I'm going to approach this content from 3 different angles. First, I want to look at the consistency of the pattern that God used with Paul and Peter's writing styles. Then, I want to look at the grammar of the Greek. And lastly, I want to examine the verses through the lens of natural or behaviors and responses, as all of God's creatures have both instincts and learned responses. I don't believe there's a problem in the structure of the roles that God set out for marriage to function. Well, there can be a problem with the roles, but when there's a problem with the roles, it's pretty easy to see because it's clearly black and white and event related. It's very visible. But when the problem's identified as a relationship problem, the solution isn't going to be found in the structural part of these roles. It's not found in better submission, additional obedience, and, like we've been wrongly taught, deeper respect. If it's a relationship problem, that's where the solution is going to be found, in the substance of the relationship, not the structure of the roles. Substance was the huge piece of the puzzle that was missing for me. That is where the respect part is, but it's not the way you think it is. All right, remember when I said that roles in marriage are for form and function? I want you to hang on to that word functional. And when you hear words like submit and obey, I want you to remember that word, function. In addition to that word, remember the phrase fair exchange of goods and services. But when you hear the word respect, you need to think in terms of partnership, collaboration, interdependence. Okay, so I wanted to lay that bit of foundation before I started with Paul and Peter's writing. They both had the same approach whenever they wrote about marriage and family. They always led out with the responsibility as it pertains to the roles in the marriage. Then they moved into the responsibility for the relationship. In Colossians 3, verse 18, Paul first talks to wives about the role of submission, which is structure for form and function, remember? And that's it. He's done addressing wives. And then he turns his attention to the husbands. And look what he says to the husband. Husbands, love your wives and don't be bitter toward them. Paul didn't say anything about the structure in their role of headship. He only addresses the relational part. He's talking to husbands about how to do partnership. Paul's making them responsible for the connection in the relationship. He's not telling them how to do it or when. He's just telling them it's all on them. Peter does it the same way in 1 Peter 3. He addresses wives first about the structural role of submission, and that's it. Then down in verse 7, he tells husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, as with a weaker vessel. Just like Paul, Peter addresses the husbands about relationship responsibility, not the function of the roles. So, if we go over to Ephesians 5, 22 through verse 24, again, Paul is addressing just the wives. About what? Her role of submission for the structure in the marriage. Then he addresses husbands. Love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. Husbands are to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. What I want you to notice is that in Colossians 3 and 1 Peter 3, neither author spoke about a wrap-up instruction as a summary for the wife after addressing the husbands. Plus, it's obtuse to summarize one point of instruction, the only point of instruction. You don't make a summary of one detail. Summaries are summaries because they contain many details. So why would we think either of their pattern style would change for Ephesians 5? That's not logical and clear, which is what God is. It would mean God is chaotic and confusing if he was to flip-flop in his word to us. It's very important that we learn how to divide the function of the defined roles in marriage from the living substance found in the relationship. Remember, your female heart will not find fulfillment in a marriage as long as you're being coerced into believing that your heart and emotions as a woman should be fulfilled in the role of a wife that's been defined for function. That's masculine thinking, right? Men experience relational fulfillment through doing tasks. They do good through form and function of responsibility. Then they feel good. But it's the opposite for us females. We're geared to operate out of emotions. As we receive, we respond. We feel good, and then we do good. Christianity, not Jesus. Christianity has tried to make us believe that we think like men, that we are just the same as men, but different. We have different reproductive parts. Our femininity has been neglected, The essence that makes us females has been obscured and invalidated. We've been deceived by the powers of leadership. Those teaching, those writing, those speaking, anyone who has placed themselves in any position of power or authority over the sheep. It's their responsibility to take care of the whole flock, all of us, especially the weaker vessels and the lambs. But in order for healing to begin, you must know and take responsibility like I did. I gave over the stewardship and authority and power. I gave it away. God didn't take it away. I allowed myself to be blinded. We've been blinded to the wolves in sheep's clothing. My dear sister, as long as you believe the respect lie in Ephesians 5:33, you will be blind and powerless against the enemy of your soul. This lie is what he uses to crush the God-given power of your femininity. Closing thoughts. First, shh. Don't say a word about this to him. Discovering that your husband's dangerous is a scary place to end up. It's never where you thought you'd be, and it feels like an unreality. But your silence about your awareness of what he really is, that's your safety zone. And always remember, a clueless guy that causes dysfunction and seems difficult, he's not dangerous. But the malignant man is not clueless. He just pretends to be difficult and dysfunctional so that he can hide how dangerous he is.